Hi and welcome back. In this part we're going to make the big stone frame. So first of all, let's make these floors invisible and drag our stone frame object out of the temp null object. Switch to the front view, hit O on the keyboard. I'm going to change the display to grow shading lines. And if you switch to the edge mode, you'll probably have all of these outer edges already selected. And just in case you don't, use the loop selection with stop at boundary edges deactivated to select these edges, then right click and extrude them, and I want to use an offset of 30 units here. And now let's use the loop selection to select these edges and delete them. And in this case we don't have to optimize this object. If you switch to the point mode, you can see that by deleting these edges we also have deleted the points. Now let's select these 4 points down here, make the floors visible again. And I'm going to move these points down almost all the way to the bottom of this wall. And now let's select these 2 points here, activate the Move tool, and in the Attribute Manager go to the Snap Settings tab and enable snapping. And I want to snap to edge, so let's deselect everything else. And now I'm going to move these 2 points down until they snap to the bottom edge of this wall here. Next I'm going to copy the Y position of these 2 points and then select these 2 points here, paste the Y position, and I want these 4 points here to have a height of 25 units, so I'm going to enter plus 25. And next we're going to change the geometry of this big stone frame down here. We're going to make copies of this frame and move these copies to the other windows. And I want a connection between these copies later on. So we have to modify the geometry down here a bit. Right click and activate the Knife tool. And in the Attribute Manager, on the Options tab, make sure that Restrictor Selection is deactivated, and I'm using the Constraint option here with an angle of 90 degrees. And on the Snap Settings tab, select Point and deselect Edge. I'm going to make the floors invisible again. And now let's make a cut here, and one here, and over here, and over here. Now let's go to the polygon mode, select these polygons here, right click and melt them, go back to the point mode, and I'm going to select this point here, copy the Y position, and then select these 4 points, paste the Y position and align these points. Let's select this point again, and this time I'm going to copy the X position. Then select this point down here, paste the X position, and now let's select this point, again copy the X position and paste the X position down here. And now let's duplicate this stone frame. We need 6 copies. Enable movement on the X-axis, deactivate rotation, and apply these settings. And now I'm going to connect these stone frames and delete these 2 objects. Okay, select our new object here, go to the edge mode and use the bridge tool to bridge these edges down here to connect all of these frames. Okay, and now I'm going to select this edge over here and this edge over here, right click and extrude these edges by any amount you like, and then scale these edges to 2600 units on the X-axis so that they fit on this wall here. And now let's duplicate this object. We need 3 copies, and deactivate movement, enable rotation, and apply these settings. And now let's connect these 4 stone frames. Delete these 2 objects, select the new one, go to the point mode, deselect all, and then optimize this object. Then let's go to the polygon mode, hit Ctrl A, right click and extrude these polygons, and I want to use an offset of 10 meters here. And make sure that the maximum angle is set to 90 degrees, and we don't want to create caps or n-gons. Okay, apply these settings. And now let's go down here and use the loop selection to select these polygons here and delete them. Go to the point mode. Again, make sure that everything is deselected, and then optimize this object again. And I also want to create a new material here. So let's go to the material manager, double click to create this new material, and then double click on the material, deactivate specular, and I'm going to bring the color up to 96%. And let's rename this to white 2 and drag it onto our stone frame here. Let's make our floors visible and do a quick test render. Okay, so I think this looks very nice. And next we're going to make the selection for beveling. So I'm going to switch these floors invisible again, go to the top view, and let's use the rectangle selection tool to select all of these points and delete them. So now we have only this front part of the stone frame left. Now let's go to the edge mode and switch to the front view. And I'm using the loop selection with stop at boundary edges activated to select these edges here. And I also want these edges. And next I'm going to use the rectangle selection tool to select this edge over here at the corner and this one over here. And we also need to select all of these edges in the corners down here. Okay. And I'm going to do this in the front view because it's easier to select these edges. So we can't see anything, but it's still easier than selecting them in the perspective view. We just need to make sure that we get all of them. Okay, so now we should have all of these edges down here in the corners selected as well. And you don't want to select this edge here. Okay, so we only need these edges here. And now let's set this selection and rename it to edges for beveling. And again, let's duplicate this object with the same settings as before. So this time I'm just going to hit apply. And again, let's connect these stone frames. Delete these 2 objects. Select this one. And select all of its tags. Restore selection, select edges, and set this selection and delete these tags. Okay, and if you want to bevel these edges, what you could do is bevel the edges only on one side of this building. Let's rename this to big stone frame first. Make a copy and drag this copy into the floors null object, so we can delete this one later on. Let's go back to the point mode and switch to the top view. Now select all of these points, delete them. So again, we only have this front part of the stone frame left. Now let's go to the edge mode, right click and bevel the edges, and I'm using an offset of 0.1 here. Now let's bring the Phong angle down to 33 maybe. Okay, and if you want to clean up this mesh, go to the front view, and I'm going to change the display to lines, switch to the point mode, and I'm using the rectangle selection tool here. We need to get in very close and then select this point here and this point over here, and then copy the size on the x-axis. Now let's use the live selection tool to select these 2 points here, and go to structure, weld, and weld these points to this one. And over here we need to select these 2 points here, so hit the space bar to switch back to the live selection tool. Select these 2 points, hit the space bar again to switch back to the weld tool, and weld these 2 points to here. Now switch back to the live selection tool, and we need to select these 2 new points here, and these 2 points are down here at the bottom, and then paste the size on the X position that we copied earlier. Hit apply, and this will align the points and bring back the bevels. Okay, and of course you'd have to do this for all of the other areas on this stone frame as well. And here at the corners, what you would do is select these points and align them on the z-axis, then do the same thing over here. Select these and align them on the z-axis, and we need to bring the Phong angle down a bit more, to 21 maybe. And now let's duplicate this object again with the same settings as before. So again, I'm just going to hit apply here and connect these stone frames. Delete these 2 objects, and since we have now beveled the edges, we can get rid of these tags. And now let's deselect everything and optimize the object again. And now I'm going to select these points at the corner down here, hit S on the keyboard to center these points on the screen, and we need to get in a little closer. You can see that we have these gaps here at the corners. So here we need to select these 2 points and weld them in the middle, so just left click anywhere in the viewport, and I'll go to the edge mode and use the bridge tool to bridge these 2 edges here and these 2 edges here. Okay, and if you go to the polygon mode and select this polygon at the corner, you can see that this is 0.05 on the z-axis and on the x-axis. And if you select this polygon here, you can see this is twice the size on the y-axis and on the z-axis. So if you want this bevel here to be the same size as this one, what you could do is go to the edge mode and select this edge here, and we need to activate the move tool here. Go to the modeling axis in the attribute manager, and make sure that the orientation is set to object. And now we can move this edge by plus 0.05 on the x-axis. And now let's select this edge, and we need to move this edge by plus 0.05 units on the z-axis. Okay, and now if you switch back to the polygon mode, this corner polygon here should be 0.1 on the x-axis and 0.1 on the z-axis. So this bevel is the same size on all of these corners. Okay, and if you render this, you have a nice even bevel on this object. And of course you'd have to do the same thing for the other three corners here. Okay, now let's delete this beveled object and make our floors visible again. Let's also make the ground floor visible, and let's do a final test render here. And there's one more thing that I want to do here. Let's select the walls, go to the point mode, switch to the front view, hit O on the keyboard, and select all of these top points here. I want to move these up a bit to 1760 units on the y-axis, and this is because I want to add another stone frame up here, and we need to have a little space between our big stone frame and the one we're going to put up here. Okay, and that's it for this lesson. In the next bit we're going to make a simple ceiling for these walls. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye bye. Hi, before we start putting a ceiling on top of this fourth floor, I need to fix this big stone frame because I forgot to optimize it. So select it and then go to selection, deselect all, then go to functions, optimize, and hit OK. And this will get rid of the overlapping points at the corners here. And now that this is fixed, we can make the floors and the ground floor invisible. And now let's create a cube, and I want to make this cube a size of 2730 units on the x-axis, 35 units on the y-axis, and 2730 units on the z-axis. And I also want this cube to have 5 segments on the y-axis. Let's rename this to fourth floor ceiling and make it editable. Then go to the polygon mode and use the loop selection tool. And I want to select these polygons here. Right click, extrude them, and I'm using an offset of -5. Now let's switch to the edge mode and use the loop selection again to select these edges here. And these edges. And I also want to select these edges at the corners, and I'm going to use the ring selection for this. Okay, and now let's save this selection and rename it to edges for beveling. Now let's switch to the front view, hit O on the keyboard, activate the move tool. We have to change the snap settings here, deselect point and select edge and midpoint, and then go to the object axis tool. And let's bring this object axis down until it snaps to the bottom edge of the ceiling. Now let's go back to the model tool, and on the snap settings tab in the attribute manager, deselect midpoint. I'm going to make the floors visible again. Now let's move this ceiling up to here and snap it back down on top of the fourth floor. I'm going to apply this white material to the 4th floor ceiling. Let's drag it into the floor as null object. And let's make the ground floor visible again. And do a quick test render. And this is it for this lesson. In the next bit we're going to start working on the top floor. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye bye. Hi and welcome back. In this part we're going to start the 5th floor. And there's going to be a lot of repetition here, so you should be familiar with most of the things that I'm going to do here. First of all, I'll make the floors and the ground floor invisible. Go to the front view and create a rectangle spline, which is our first window opening for the 5th floor. And I'm going to change the size of this spline to 170 by 170 units. Make it editable and make a copy of this spline, which we need for snapping. Select the original window spline, change its type to Bezier. Go to the point mode, select the bottom 2 points, then go to Structure, Edit Spline, Hard Interpolation. Next, let's activate the Move tool, and we're going to change the snap settings. Deselect Edge and select Spline. And now I'm going to select these 2 top points of our window opening. Activate the Move tool, and then hold down the Shift key and left click and drag on this bottom handle of the left point and snap it to the reference spline. And I'm going to do the same thing here. And now let's move these 2 points down a bit and make sure that the top of this arch is aligned with our reference spline, like so. And now we can delete this reference spline. Select our new window spline, duplicate it. We need 6 copies and move it by 350 units on the x-axis. Deactivate rotation, apply these settings, and let's put these window splines in a new null object by hitting Alt-G. Delete this one, select this one, activate the Move tool and the Model tool, and center these splines on the grid by entering 0 for the X position. And now we need another rectangle spline for the wall, and I'm going to make this 2600 by 320 units. So I want this wall to be a little less high than the walls on the 1st to 4th floors. And let's make this spline editable. Change its type to Bezier. Go to the point mode, select all of its points, and go to Structure, Edit Spline, Hard Interpolation. And now select the window splines as well. Right click and connect all of these splines. Let's drag this left window spline out of the null object, then delete this null object and the original wall spline. Select this spline, and I'm going to move the window points down by 5 units on the y-axis. And now select the bottom points here, move them down by another 4 units. And we need to do the same for this stone frame spline. So select all of its points, move them down by -5 units, and select the bottom points, move them down by another 4 units. And now I'm going to select this rectangle spline, hold down the Alt key, and create an Extrude NURBS object. I'm going to change the movement of this Extrude NURBS object to 0 to get a flat object. Let's switch the display to row shading lines again. And now I'm going to change the settings for the spline. I want the intermediate points to be natural, and we can bring the detail down to 3 here. Now let's select the Extrude NURBS object, make it editable. Right click, activate the knife tool, and we're going to use the same settings here as before. Okay, and on the Snap Settings tab we need to change the snapping to point and deselect spline. And now let's cut here and here, and I also want to make cuts here. Now I'm going to delete this part of the wall, and again let's get rid of some of the points that we don't need here. Okay, so over here we only need 2 points to define these straight lines, and we can get rid of everything in between. Same for the windows here. Select all of these points, delete them, and down here delete all of these points. Okay, and next let's activate the knife tool again and remove this n-gon. And I'm going to cut this exactly in the same way that I cut the walls on the 4th floor. So there's nothing new here. Okay, and now we need to align these points, and again this is exactly the same that we did on the other floors, for the ground floor and the 4th floor, for example. So here I'm going to select this point as a reference, copy the Y position and paste it to the only new point we have on this horizontal row of points. Same here, copy the Y position, paste it to this point. And now we need to copy the X positions, and here we have to select the entire row, paste the X position and align these points. And here I'm going to copy and paste the X position, same here, and here, and here we have to select the entire row again, paste the X position and align these points, and the same here. Okay, so just keep copying and pasting the X position around until all of these points are positioned and aligned. Okay, so now we're almost done here. Just a few more points. And these ones here in the middle have to be positioned at 0 on the x-axis, and their size has to be 0 in order for the symmetry to work properly. And over here, again, I'm going to copy and paste the X position, well, to the entire row. Okay, and here I'm going to select this one as a reference, copy the X position, select the entire row, paste the X position and align these points. And now we have to move these top points, which make up the arch of these windows, because we need this spline to be inside of the window opening. And I'm going to select these points here and change their size to 135 on the x-axis, because we have to make sure that the spline and the wall don't intersect here. Okay, and now we're going to do the same thing on the other windows. And now we can see why I kept this right half of the window in the middle, because this will enable us to scale these points apart and position these points here exactly where they should be. Now we can delete these points here so that we only have the left half of the wall left. And now we need to move these top points of the window arches up a bit. And I'm going to move them by 2 units on the y-axis, and that should do the trick. So now we can see the spline is inside the window opening. Okay. And now with this wall selected, hold down the Alt key and create a symmetry object. Make this symmetry object editable. Drag our wall out of the symmetry, delete the symmetry, select the wall again, and let's delete these 2 points here in the middle. Go to the edge mode and use the bridge tool to close this gap. Then go to the polygon mode, hit Ctrl A and reverse the normals here. Okay, and next I'm going to select the wall and the spline, switch to the model tool, and we need to move these to -1300 on the z-axis. Then hit Alt G to place these two in a null object. Activate the Object Axis tool and the Move tool, and we're going to change the snapping here from point to edge, and then move this object axis down until it snaps to the bottom edge of this wall here. Go back to the model tool. Let's make our floors visible. And now we're going to move this null object up to here and snap it to the 4th floor ceiling. Now we can deactivate snapping. And let's move these 2 objects out of the null object and delete this null object. And also I'm going to delete this polygon selection tag. Next I want to duplicate this wall, but first of all let's activate the Object Axis tool and reset the axis to 0 on the z-axis, and it also has to be 0 on the x-axis. Go back to the model tool and duplicate this wall. We need 3 copies, and enable rotation this time. Apply these settings and connect these 4 walls. Delete these objects, select this new one, go to the point mode, make sure that everything's deselected and optimize the object. Then go to the polygon mode and select everything by hitting Ctrl A, or deselect everything by hitting Ctrl Shift A, and right click and extrude. And we need an offset of -30, and we need to create caps here. Hit Ctrl A and reverse the normals again, and go to the top view, switch to the point mode, and I'm going to delete everything except for the front wall here. Let's make these floors invisible. Okay, go to the polygon mode and use the loop selection tool to select these polygon loops here. And now let's delete these polygons and duplicate the wall again with the same settings as before, and connect these walls. Delete these objects. Select our new object. I'm going to rename this to walls. Go to the point mode and again make sure that everything's deselected, then optimize the object. Go to the polygon mode and use the loop selection to select these polygons here and these polygons down there. Undo this, select these polygons. Okay, delete these, and this is the basic geometry for our walls on the 5th floor. In the next bit we're going to make the stone frame for these windows. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye bye. Hi, in this lesson we're going to do the stone frame for these windows. So let's select our stone frame spline, go to the front view, hit O on the keyboard, and I'm going to make these walls invisible. Now with this spline selected, I'll press and hold the Alt key and create an extrude NURBS object. Again, I want to change the movement of this extrude NURBS object to 0 to get a flat object, and I want to change the settings for this spline. Now let's switch the intermediate points to natural, and this time I need more detail up here on this arch section, so I'm going to bring the number up to 15. We don't need quite as much detail as for the frames on the 4th floor. Now let's select this extrude NURBS object, make it editable, go to the polygon mode, hit Ctrl A, and let's reverse the normals. Go to the point mode, and let's get rid of all of the points that we don't need. So we need only 2 points here, down here, and here. And now we should have a total number of 19 points on this window. Let's go to the edge mode and use the loop selection tool. With stop at boundary edges deactivated, select these edges, right click and extrude them with an offset of 15 units. Okay, let's go back to the polygon mode, delete this center polygon. And now we can right click and extrude these polygons. And I don't want to create caps here, and I want an offset of 5 units. Now let's go to the edge mode and use the loop selection to select these edges here. And we need to move these back by plus 30 units on the z-axis. Okay, and now let's select these edges here for beveling. Again, I'm going to keep this bottom edge here selected. And maybe we should bring the Phong angle down on this object to 44. Delete this polygon selection tag and rename this to stone frame. Okay, and now let's use the live selection tool to select these edges up here. And I also need this edge and this edge over here, and this one and this one. Okay, let's save this selection and rename it to edges for beveling. Now we can start duplicating this object. So first we need 6 copies, enable movement on the x-axis, deactivate rotation, apply and connect these stone frames, delete these ones, select the new object and select the tags. And since I know that all of the edges are selected that we need for beveling, I'm not going to restore the selection, select edges. We can skip these steps and go straight to selection, set selection, and then delete these tags. Now we need to duplicate again, and this time we need 3 copies. Deactivate movement, enable rotation, apply these settings, and again connect the stone frames. Delete these 2 objects, and I'm going to set this selection and delete these tags. Okay, rename this to stone frames, and I'm going to apply this white material to these stone frames. And let's select the stone frame and the walls, hit Alt G, and rename this new null object to 5th floor. Okay, let's make these walls visible again. And that's it for this part. In the next bit we're going to make the window frames for the 5th floor. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye bye. Hi and welcome back. We're not going to make the window frames in this part because we need to make the window sills first. So let's select the stone frames, go to the polygon mode and use the loop selection tool to select this polygon loop here of the first window on the left on the front of this building. Right click and split these polygons off. Let's drag this new object out of the 5th floor null object and delete the selection tag and the material. I'm going to rename this to window sill. And let's make a copy of this one. And this is going to be the basis for our window frame. I'm going to put this in the temp null object. Okay, now let's make this 5th floor invisible. Go to the point mode and select all of these points at the top, delete them, then center the object axis on this windowsill. Go to the edge mode, and I want to move this front edge here to -24 on the z-axis. Go to the polygon mode, right click and extrude with an offset of 4 units, and we need to create caps. And this time we can't delete the polygons on the left and on the right, because these parts will be seen in the final model. Okay, so now let's go to the edge mode, and this time we need almost all of the edges on this windowsill for beveling. So select everything except the edges at the back of this windowsill. Save this selection and rename it to edges for beveling. Okay, and now again we're going to duplicate this windowsill around. First we need 6 copies. Enable movement on the x-axis, deactivate rotation, hit apply, and connect these windowsills. Now let's select this new object and the tags. Set the selection and delete these tags, and then duplicate again. And this time we need 3 copies. Deactivate movement and enable rotation. And again connect these windowsills. Delete these objects. Select this one and the tags. Set the selection and delete these tags. Okay, rename this to windowsills. Put it in the 5th floor. Null object. And now we're going to make the window frames. So let's drag our window frame out of this temp null object and make the 5th floor invisible. Go to the point mode and select these bottom points down here. Move them up by 4 units on the y-axis. Again, so they will be placed on the windowsill. Let's check if I deactivated snapping. Yes, I did. It's important to deactivate snapping before you move these points around here. Okay, now let's make this 5th floor invisible again and center the object axis on this frame. Then go to the model tool and scale this frame to 10 units on the z-axis. And I'm going to move this back a bit by +3 units on the z-axis. Go to the polygon mode, right click and extrude without caps, and I'm using an offset of 4.5. Again, these are the same settings that I used for the frames on the other floors. Now let's extrude inner with an offset of 2.5 and extrude again with an offset of 2.5. Extrude inner with an offset of 1.5 and extrude again with an offset of 4 units. Right click and split the selected polygons off. This is going to be our window pane. Put this one in the temp null object for the time being. And now I'm going to reduce the number of polygons on this frame. So let's go to the right view, switch to the point mode, hit O on the keyboard, and I'm going to select this point here as a reference, and as with the other frames, this one should be positioned at 1 meter on the z-axis. So this is where I want these points, and these points up here to be as well. So let's move these to 1 meter on the z-axis, align them on the z-axis, deselect all and optimize the object. Go to the front view, switch the cameras to back, hit O on the keyboard, go to the polygon mode and select these polygons here. Right click and melt them. Then let's melt these polygons here, and now select all of these and let's melt these as well. Now switch to the point mode, and I'm going to bring the radius of the life selection tool up to 12. And let's select all of these points here, delete them, and delete these points down here. Let's bring the radius of this life selection tool back down to 2. Okay, and now let's switch to the edge mode. Hit Ctrl-Shift-A to deselect everything. And now I'm going to use the loop selection tool to select the edges for beveling. And let's use the life selection tool to select these edges down here. And these edges over here. Okay, and up here we need to select these edges. And over here we need to select these ones. Okay, save this selection, rename it to edges for beveling, and now let's start duplicating this window frame around. So first we need 6 copies, enable movement on the x-axis and deactivate rotation. Connect these objects, delete these two, select our new object and the tags, set the selection and delete these tags. And now let's duplicate again. And this time we need 3 copies, deactivate movement, enable rotation, and then again connect the window frames, delete these objects, select this one and the tags, save the selection and delete these 3 tags. Okay, I'm going to rename this to window frames and put it in the 5th floor null object. And that's it for this part. In the next bit we're going to make the window panes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye bye.